The Disrupt Education vlog can be found on YouTube. To hear it in podcast form, search Disrupt Education on any of the following podcast platforms: Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or Stitcher. Welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I'm Peter Hostrawser. Hey, thank you all so much for being here. This is going to be the last podcast recorded for 2021, and what a year it has been. I can't even begin to explain all the different things that are going on and how disrupting education has come this far. I would have never have thought that this podcast would have grown the way it's grown, and what is happening in education would be the way it is with the pandemic and everything else going on in education. So I wanted to take a moment and just say thank you first to all my guests from 2021. In the notes of this, there should be a nice long list of those people, and just a tremendous amount of effort and time frames and taping and recording and communication across the board with all my guests. The other thing that I wanted to just say is thank you all for listening, because I am on my way to 23,000 downloads. It is super awesome. I have stats from all countries all across the world. Big shout outs to obviously the US, France, Germany, and thank you all worldwide listeners for listening to what's going on, because it's not just a one country challenge as education is changing. It's such a shift that is going on across the world. And one of the things that I can say about 2021 is coming into this year and understanding how we can do this on a Google Meet or a Zoom or different ways to interview people. It has really expanded my knowledge through the guests and understanding what's happening across the world and how the challenges are similar, and the way that we can look at solutions to help everyone learn and grasp education in an equitable way. It's across the world, and it has been my pleasure actually to learn from everybody who has been on the podcast throughout the world. Just amazing people getting up at 2-3 in the morning to be on the podcast, to do recording. I just can't thank everybody enough for that. The other really cool thing that happened in 2021 was I became part of the EdUp Experience Podcast Network, and what an amazing group of people. We talk a lot on LinkedIn, but if you go to edupexperience.com, you'll see all the different podcasts. When I got into this business and trying to change education, I was very arrogant. I thought I would do it all by myself. And if you listen to the podcast, you hear me say that here and there, where we all can't do this alone. We have to attach and really start to find our network. And a major part of 2021 was the EdUp Experience. And they are, just go to the podcasts on there, read their blogs. There's so many different podcasts there. And it's just a tremendous amount of knowledge, information, K through 12, post-secondary education. And I've just so blessed to be a part of that. A lot of people don't know how I got started in education, so I was going to take some time today to talk a little bit about how I got started into education. When did I really start this Disrupt Education path? And as a matter of fact, it used to be a YouTube channel. So Disrupt Education still is a YouTube channel, but it started as solely a YouTube channel. And then I want to go into what's going to happen in 2022. And we're going to start the first quarter with some themes coming up in months. So January, February, and March will have a certain theme. I've recorded all of those already with some tremendous guests, and I can't wait to see what happens there. But let me go back to my personal kind of journey into education. If you don't know, I was not coming out of college as a teacher. I came out of college as a broadcast journalism major. And I always wanted to be the person behind the camera or editing suite and working underneath, not the person out there like I am now. So it's kind of uncomfortable for me sometimes to be out here, believe it or not. But and I wanted to be a radio disc jockey. So until I went to my senior year of college, and in my undergrad, I went into a radio station to do my internship my first semester of my senior year, and I didn't like it. And at the time, I was just lost because I didn't know what I was going to do. I put this money aside for education, and I have this degree coming, and I was like, this isn't really something that I wanted to do. What am I going to do now? So outside of education, as soon as I graduated college, I went into bartending school and became a mixologist, which is a funny way to say bartender. I think it's a fancy way to do it. But I did a 2-week class at, I'm not sure if they're still around, but it's the International Bartending Institute in South Bend, Indiana. And I really had a lot of fun with that. And I ended up working at a country club in northern Indiana and really basically becoming the bar manager there and understanding how business started to work. Underneath it all, I always had still the dream that I wanted to be into editing and video production and such. But the radio part was gone. So, and then I bounced around. I did a lot of different work, a lot of different jobs. I was an entrepreneur for a while. And when I bounced into coming back, I moved to Florida and worked on a golf course down there. And that was really cool to really understand, all the different things that I got to do. And I finally got a job offer in video production. And then I came back to Indiana, and then I started a business in Michigan after that didn't quite work out. But there was one thing, getting back to where I got into education. A few years into that, I got an opportunity to really help youth, 3rd through 5th graders, do online announcements. And back then, I'm going to date myself here, it was on VHS tapes. And they did record them on an old camcorder, and they recorded the entire week. Some of the students that the teachers gave us were quote unquote great academic kids. I mean, they were just good at school and whatnot. But some of the kids were quote unquote like the disruptive kids, if you will. They weren't really good at education, or maybe they just didn't fit in or whatnot. And we did that for pretty much an entire semester. And the students would go back and the teachers would tell me that, the kids who were great academic kids were fine. But the kids who were struggling started to get it. They were attaching editing and they were attaching script writing and everything to their English and their math, because there's a lot of math and English in this. And it was connecting with them. And that was it. That was the click. I was like, I need to get back into education and really become an educator so I can help people see reality in academia put together. So that was my intro into education, and I started in Elkhart, Indiana, which they have now combined the schools, but it was Elkhart Memorial and I believe Elkhart Central High School. They merged now. And I did that for a semester, and then we moved to Chicago, and I was at a couple of schools here. And, just going through it, understanding, listening, learning for my students, because I'm from a small town and, working in an urban and a suburban area where you're learning about who people are and what they're going through and their past and how they view education was just a tremendous amount of information. So for the first 10 years, I was really quiet, understanding what's going on in the education system in the world. Of the high schools that I was teaching in, because I'm a secondary business educator. And then 2015 happened. Actually, it was in 2014. And I want to give a few shout outs to 2 teachers from Oak Park and River Forest High School, still teaching there to this day. One of them just got his doctorate. Tyrone Williams is a true hero of mine. And Lindy Novotny, who is an art teacher there as well. Both heroes. We put together this EF tour trip across Europe. We took a fabric of America, basically. There were students. Oak Park is a pretty diverse population. So you have pretty much students from many walks of life, and students who are wealthy, students who are not, students, all different kinds of race, religion, creed, sexuality. And we took a what they call a fabric of the school. We raised the funds for the kids who wouldn't be able to afford it, and we took them across Europe, and we ended up in Switzerland. So we started in Amsterdam. We went to The Hague. We went through Paris. We went through Geneva, and then we ended up in Davos, Switzerland. And one of the change of my life happened when I was there. I was one of the speakers is one of my favorite authors of all time around education is Sir Ken Robinson, and he was speaking that day. And there were a lot of different amazing people speaking, but it was just, I was numb when I was watching him speak on stage. And actually, Dr. Williams got to meet him as well. So it was really, really cool to really learn. But one of the biggest things that was happening is they were talking about all the things that are happening now, but they were already talking about how there was a disconnect with a college degree and business. There was a disconnect in education. There wasn't a way for students to actually take a hold of their own education. It was still, they were talking about sitting and getting and all these different things. And that's where I was introduced to design thinking. The projects that they have on the 3-day Education as a Human Rights seminar is the students were actually building new schools or building new ways of learning. And that was it. It was amazing. Students from all over the world were collecting information and building things. Our students were connecting with students all over the place. And it was just a thrilling ride to really see. It was a worldview change for me. And I know a lot of my listeners, a lot of administrators, a lot of teachers out there had that moment of, wait, this is really kind of where things started to happen. And I can't believe this is how there were pieces that other people see that this is what I want to do. So as I was going forward, we came back, and that very next year I started a YouTube channel called Disrupt Education. And in that YouTube channel, one of the coolest things was I just started interviewing students, and some of I would call them the founders of the OPRF School of Business were students who introduced me to people like Gary Vee and Eric Thomas and all these people who are just really just let's go, let's build things and disrupting everything. And a few years into it, after a couple, 30, 40 episodes, Gary Vee said something about Anchor and how we could do this on a podcast, and podcasts are blowing up. And that's where the Disrupt Education podcast actually started to evolve out of this. So that I just wanted to pass that along to you because I know everybody here has a story in education. You have somebody who really has helped you do something, spark something. There was a moment where you're like, wait, this is a worldview change. This could work differently. It's really that one engagement moment in education, whether you're an educator, an administrator, a parent, a school board member, a lawmaker. There's a piece in it where you remember there's that one thing, and then it just sparked a fire to do some different things and to change your kind of pivot the way that you see the world and understand different ways of how to empathize with people and also how to help others move forward in their own journey. So that's how Disrupt Education was born. And here we are, like I said, right in the middle of really disrupting education, finishing off 2021, and still things are out there. There is a pipeline challenge with teachers and educators. There's not enough. There are people leaving. There's not people coming in. We are looking at different ways of doing education. There's tons of different schools out there, public, private, homeschool. And it's just been an amazing journey. And one of the things that I hope that I have been able to do for every one of my listeners is to give you an insight into all these different things, ed tech companies, schools, people who are doing education different, who see it differently, and know that there's no wrong way. There are just different ways to learn, and we can all learn from each other. I know there's a lot of divisiveness here in the States, and one of the things, especially in education, it's difficult to manage that. And, hopefully I'm giving everybody a hope to dig in and really kind of embrace the way that we move forward and change, because change is hard and learning is a very difficult thing to do. Learning hurts. Learning is uncomfortable. It's something that we're not used to. And, that's where the disrupt kind of came from, is you got to disrupt. You have to unlearn the easiness, like sitting back and getting straight A's and talking about grades and what does that even mean and how do you show value? So that's uncomfortable for us to do. And I challenge my students every day in classes to get uncomfortable. And it's hard. It's very hard work. So for all my teachers, administrators, people around in education, anything to do with the school, it's a difficult job, and I commend you for it. Whether you're staying or leaving, you know what? You live your life and you keep going. So in 2022, what I'm going to be doing here for the first quarter at least, we're going to see if this works, because, hey, why not? I have to get uncomfortable and try to figure some things out here with the podcast, is as we enter 2022, the first 3 months are going to have a theme with them. In the first month, I'm going to be talking to students, right? So there are 4 episodes of students where the students are going to be talking about what are their experiences, what's happening? How do you feel about education? What would you change about education? And I'm extremely excited to have these students talk about it, because they're in secondary education or post-secondary education. And I think, giving student voice, which has become kind of a tagline, is really like giving students ownership into their learning and their journey. I don't need to control it, but how can we help them through their journey? So that's going to be January of 2022. In February of 2022, we're going to dive into this burnout thing. There are teachers burning out, and I know there are many, many teachers who are not going to be returning to the classroom in January, and there's even more projected at the end of this school year in May and June that will not be returning to the classroom. They'll be pivoting into something else, whether it still has to do with education or even outside of the education world altogether. There's a lot of ed tech companies that are hiring people. There's a lot of different things that are happening. So we're going to talk about that pivot and that change and what's burning people out, and how do we actually help listen a little bit more to what's going on. And before we get to a time where it is amazingly difficult, where a reaction is actually just going to hurt our students because we're not going to have enough educators. How do we respond to it, and how do we get ahead of it? So that's where we go into March 2020. We're going to start talking about policymakers and leading with change in administrations and laws, because I think 2020 is going to be one of those years. 2022, I should say, is going to be one of those years where there's going to be a tremendous amount of change due to challenges that are going to arise that are going to be bigger than school systems can handle. And while that's scary for me to say that, I also think it's exciting because there's opportunity in that chaos to really figure out, hey, what are some new ways that we can step up and help our children, help our adults, help everybody on these learning journeys to really enhance local communities, regional areas, and entire countries to become better places for human beings in general. So with that being said, I'm going to round out here. I know this is a solo Disrupt Education podcast. It's actually the first time I've done this. If you go all the way back to, I think, the second one, I do a speech way back when I was at Oak Park and River Forest High School about haters, waiters, and doers, and you can listen to that. But this is the first time I've done this for a while, and I've just got to give a huge shout out to my listeners. I want to thank you all so much for this. We made it through 2021. It has been a unbelievably thrilling, scary, disappointing, opportunity, anything, every emotion has happened in education in 2021. And it has certainly been disrupted. And hopefully we can learn from that. In 2022, I feel the changes are going to start to take place. We're going to start to see do students even need to go into a school building? There's going to be just so many different things that are going to evolve out of it. And it's going to hurt. And it's going to be great, and it's going to suck, and it's going to be good. So be prepared for it. But my wish to you is, number one, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Please take a look at our sponsors. You know me, I'm a huge advocate of building portfolios. I love the spikeview platform. It is a place for our students actually to own who they are and really say what value do they bring. And it doesn't always have to be in a box like we box it up in education. I'm super excited to continue that journey with spikeview. And also eLearning partners, online courses. There are a lot of educators out there. You all are superheroes. You have an expertise. And these guys at eLearning partners, Johnny and Hector, are truly there to help people build online courses and programs that will not fail. And I know that's a difficult thing because I've tried it a few times myself. So I want to thank them. I want to thank the EdUp Experience Podcast Network. And onward to 2022, we're going to continue to disrupt education. Thank you all for hanging out, and I'll see you next year.